What if I told you there's a simple modification that could save you thousands of dollars in repair costs, add extra power to your diesel engine, and even get rid of one of the most annoying systems ever put in modern diesels? Sounds amazing, right? Well, here's the twist. This same modification is banned in most countries, and if you get caught, it could lead to hefty fines. Yup, today we're talking about the DPF delete, a topic that has diesel owners split right down the middle. Some people swear by it, while others say it's the worst thing you could ever do to your truck. Before we jump into why this modification is so controversial, let's quickly break down what the DPF actually does and how a DPF delete works. The DPF, short for diesel particulate filter, is a special filter built into your exhaust system. Its main job is simple. It captures and traps soot particles, tiny bits of pollution that come from burning diesel fuel. Without it, that black smoke would shoot straight into the air every time you hit the gas. Now, because the filter catches so much soot, it doesn't stay clean forever. Over time, it fills up and needs to go through a process called regeneration. That's when the engine heats things up to burn off the soot so the filter doesn't get clogged. This process keeps your engine running smoothly and helps reduce harmful emissions. So what happens when someone decides to delete the DPF? Well, as the name suggests, a DPF delete means removing that filter completely from the exhaust system. There are two main ways people do it: physically removing the DPF and replacing it with a straight pipe, or gutting the inside of the filter but leaving the outer shell so it still looks stock from the outside. In both cases, the result is the same. The soot is no longer being filtered, and your engine breathes more freely. And that's where the debate begins. Because while deleting the DPF can bring a few tempting benefits, it also comes with serious drawbacks you need to know about. Let's start with the pros. Power gains are usually the first thing diesel owners notice after deleting the DPF. With that restrictive filter gone, the exhaust can flow much more freely, and the engine doesn't have to fight against all that back pressure. That means more horsepower and torque, especially if the ECU, that's your engine's computer, gets properly tuned afterward. Because yes, once you remove the DPF, your engine needs a software update so the ECU can adjust to the new setup. Without it, you won't see the full performance benefits and might even get warning lights or weird behavior. Another plus is fuel economy. The DPF system forces the engine to work harder by creating resistance in the exhaust, which burns more fuel. When you delete it, you can expect a small but noticeable boost in mileage, typically somewhere around 5 to 10%. And that's just the start. And most diesel vehicles, DPFs eventually get clogged with soot, especially if you do a lot of short trips or city driving. When that happens, your engine might run rough, lose power, or even go into limp mode to protect itself. Once the DPF is gone, that problem disappears completely. No more clogging, no more forced regenerations, no more expensive DPF replacements that can cost thousands of dollars. Basically, it removes one of the biggest headaches diesel owners deal with, and can make your engine feel stronger, more reliable, and cheaper to maintain.
That's the bright side.
But of course, like everything else in the car world, there's another side of the story. All right, now let's flip the coin. Because while a DPF delete can make your diesel run stronger and smoother, it's definitely not all sunshine and horsepower. One of the biggest downsides, emission. Remember, the whole reason the DPF exists is to trap harmful particles before they get released into the air. Once you take that filter out, all that soot goes straight out of your tailpipe. You'll notice more visible smoke, especially when you hit the gas hard or tow heavy loads. Some drivers don't care about that. They say, hey, it's my truck, I paid for it. But here's the problem. Without the DPF, your vehicle might fail its emissions test, depending on how strict the laws are where you live. Even if the smoke doesn't seem too bad, the truth is the engine computer, ECU, doesn't know the filter is gone. It still tries to run like the DPF is there, which can throw things off, causing error codes, warning lights, or even worse, emissions if it's not tuned properly. That's why almost every DPF delete requires a software update or ECU remap. Without that, the engine won't adjust correctly, and you'll probably end up with problems like poor performance, check engine lights, or failed inspections. Another thing people notice after deleting the DPF is sound. With the filter gone, the exhaust note can get noticeably louder, especially under acceleration. Some owners love that deep, raw diesel rumble. It makes the truck feel more alive. but others find it too much, especially on long highway drives or in quiet neighborhoods. In some cases, the exhaust might also produce more visible smoke, which can draw unwanted attention. It really depends on your truck model and how the delete was done. Some setups barely change the sound, while others turn your exhaust into a mini thunderstorm every time you start the engine. Now let's talk about the most serious issue: legality. Here's the plain truth. In most countries, and even in many US states, removing or tampering with emissions equipment is illegal. That includes the DPF, EGR, and catalytic converter. If your truck gets inspected or caught without a DPF, it could be labeled as not road legal. And if the EPA or local authorities find out, the fines can be massive, sometimes in the thousands of dollars, especially for shops that perform the deletes. So while it might be tempting to pull that filter out for better power and reliability, you're technically taking your truck out of legal territory. Now that doesn't stop everyone. In some areas, enforcement is pretty loose. Some people do the delete anyway and just keep the truck for off-road or farm use. Others take the risk and drive it normally, hoping they never get checked. But it's definitely something you need to think about carefully before making that move. So far, we've covered the main pros and cons: more power and reliability on one side, higher emissions and legal risk on the other. But if you're still curious about how a DPF delete is actually done, what it costs, and what your other options are, stick around, because that's exactly what we'll get into next. There are three main ways people perform a DPF delete. While the results are basically the same, the methods are a bit different. Option 1. You can gut the DPF, which means removing all the filter material inside, but leaving the metal housing in place. From the outside, it still looks completely stock, like nothing was ever touched. But inside, the filter is gone, and exhaust gases can flow straight through. This is the sneakiest option because it keeps the system looking original. Most people wouldn't even notice unless they took it apart. Option 2. You can remove all the DPF hardware entirely. That means taking off the filter housing, pipes, sensors, everything, and replacing the entire section with a straight pipe. This setup gives the best airflow and performance, but it's also the easiest to spot. Anyone looking underneath your truck will see right away that the DPF is missing. Option 3. There's also a software-only delete, where the DPF is still physically there, but the ECU is reprogrammed to completely ignore it. The computer stops monitoring the DPF system, and it acts as if it doesn't exist. Most people combine this with a physical delete to avoid clogging issues. But in some cases, a software delete alone can temporarily solve problems like error codes or limp mode. Now let's talk about the cost. The hardware part isn't that expensive. If you're handy with tools, you could even make your own replacement pipe or block-off plates. Otherwise, you can buy ready-made DPF delete kits online, usually costing between a few $100s to around $1,000, depending on your vehicle. But here's the big one: the ECU tuning. That software update is what makes or breaks the job. If you know what you're doing and have tuning experience, you could try to flash it yourself, but it's risky. One small mistake during the process could brick your ECU, meaning your truck won't even start. That's why most owners go to a professional tuner, and that can cost anywhere from $500 to $3,000 depending on your truck model, the complexity of the tune, and your location. So in total, a complete DPF delete job might run you anywhere from $800 to over $4,000 if you include parts and tuning. But what if you don't want to go that far? What if you just want to fix DPF problems without deleting it entirely? Well, there are a few alternatives. For starters, you can try DPF cleaning services. They can clean out build-up soot and ash from the filter, restoring its performance for a few $100. It's not a permanent fix, but it can buy you some time. Another option is to change your driving habits. DPFs tend to clog faster when a vehicle is only driven on short trips or in heavy city traffic, because the engine never gets hot enough to regenerate properly. If you drive more on the highway, keep your RPMs up and let the engine fully warm up. You can help the system burn off soot naturally. In many cases, just changing the way you drive can keep the DPF from clogging again and save you a lot of frustration. So whether you choose to delete it or just maintain it properly, it really comes down to your situation, how you use your vehicle, where you live, and what risks you're willing to take. But we're not done yet. In the final part, we'll wrap it all up and talk about what this means for you as a diesel owner. whether deleting the DPF is a smart move or a major mistake. All right, let's bring it all together. We've talked about what the DPF system does, what happens when you delete it, and the pros, cons, and costs that come with the decision. Now it's time to answer the big question. Is a DPF delete worth it? If you look at it from a performance and reliability point of view, the answer might seem like a solid yes. Removing the DPF means better airflow, more power, fewer clogs, and no more costly replacement filters that can drain your wallet. It can make your diesel engine feel like it's breathing freely again. Smoother, stronger, and more responsive. For drivers who use their trucks for towing, off-road work, or heavy hauling, those gains can make a real difference. But the other side of that equation can't be ignored. The DPF is there for a reason. It reduces pollution, keeps emissions in check, and helps make diesel vehicles cleaner for everyone. Without it, your exhaust will be dirtier, and depending on where you live, you might be breaking the law just by driving the truck on public roads. And that's the part most people overlook, the risk. If your state or country enforces emissions laws strictly, a DPF delete could mean hefty fines, failed inspections, or even having your vehicle declared unfit for the road. On top of that, if your truck ever needs to be sold or traded in, you might have to reinstall the DPF system just to make it legal again. And that's another big expense. So while the DPF delete can save you from short-term repairs, it can also create long-term problems if you're not careful. The key is knowing what you're getting into before doing anything. Do your research, check local laws, and if you decide to go through with it, get the work done professionally so you don't damage your engine or ECU in the process. And if you'd rather stay on the safe side, focus on DPF maintenance instead. Drive at higher speeds occasionally to help it regenerate. Avoid constant short trips. And get it cleaned if you notice performance issues. Those simple steps can help you avoid most DPF problems without breaking any laws. So at the end of the day, the DPF delete is one of those mods that can make your diesel run like a dream or become a nightmare, depending on how, where, and why you do it. Only you can decide if the reward is worth the risk. If you found this explanation helpful, make sure to like and subscribe for more honest takes on diesel performance and maintenance. Thanks for watching, and as always, take care of your engine, and it'll take care of you.